live like on the stream?
Yeah, so the audio is live being streamed right now.
Let's see if that's the truth. Yeah, you're right. What's the delay?
Shouldn't be more than 15, 20 seconds. But get like height and everything, right? You know.
It's him. He's here.
He's here?
Yeah. When did it happen for you? When did you feel it like slip out of your hands?
I mean, like, I wasn't really paying attention to social media, but like, probably after the 3rd episode in season 8, I was like,
me too. When the Night King got killed, it was like,
I was like, wait,
is this?
I was like, wait, what?
Here you go.
So I grabbed those and I forgot to put them in my car, but I did grab this. It's better than nothing.
Should work.
No noise cancellation.
It's nice that they have the in-ear stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the audio is live right now,
But it doesn't matter. Yeah, we're good.
just letting you know.
Pour this wherever you want to pour it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Alright, so we're just gonna do some quick testing and
Go
make
from
sure
there.
everything sounds good.
Did you work today?
Yeah, I'm working today, going right back to work after this.
What's your time limit? We don't want to keep you too long.
Probably an hour.
Okay.
Where should I play this in?
Over there. I need to plug mine in too. Actually, I lied. I'm full of shit. It's right here.
That's right, yeah.
Hold it still so we can slide it right in. Wait until you hear the clicky clicks.
Is that doing you? Oh. You hear me?
Let's say something.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Alright. You can adjust the volume. That's not going to change your microphone, but it'll change the volume in your ear right there.
Cool.
So this one's like for you, this one's for Matt, this one's for me.
Talking to it for me?
Hello?
So I'm volume 2.
You're volume 1.
You're
Volume
volume
1. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There we go. That's nice.
You hear it?
Oh yeah, it gets all stupid. I know what to do. There it is.
There it is. All
It's
right.
loud as Christ.
Just don't move.
Deal.
All right. So I'm gonna start recording. We're already streaming.
Cool.
And we're live with Sean Pinnock. You taught me how to say your name.
Thank
That's
God.
good.
Get it right now.
I had to be corrected a few seconds ago to make sure.
But so you're a VR game developer. You started a studio, CyberDream,
Mm-hmm.
and right now you're working on a battle royale.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that sparked your interest in gaming? I mean, a lot of us are gamers, but not all of us say to themselves, "I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to make games." What inspired that?
That's like a probably like a long answer, right? So I mean, I've always wanted to make games. I think a lot of people do when they're growing up, especially. But I was one of the people that actually spent a lot of my time in my youth actually making games, right?
Mm-hmm.
It started
Really?
out with like pen and paper,
Wow.
that kind of thing, and it's just like as a kid, right? We'd be running around outside, and we'd be playing football or we'd be playing tag, something most kids do. And I'm in my room. I used to read a lot, right? I grew up like reading Lord of the Rings, like in like 3rd grade. Like that's like how I grew up, and I've like got all these like fanciful ideas in my head, and I'm like, why don't we like play with dragons? And my friends are like, dude, we just want to play football. That's kind of just how it was, And I'd be like, well, what if I come up with something that everyone wants to do? So I'd sit in my room for a days on end sometimes, and I'd draft something that I think that'd be really cool, and then I'd put a spin on it. That'd say, okay, like, you know, let's. I know the guys like to play football. Why don't we build it in a way where like we got football in the game? So you'd be scoring points, but you know, you'd be getting HP, and there'd be levels, and you'd be fighting monsters all the time, and we'd end up making a big thing. And that's kind of how it all started. And the years and years went by, and did more and more stuff, and it's kind of just never stopped. So.
Did you have a favorite of the games that you made, if you can remember?
Yeah, a couple games I really liked that I want to make into real games one day. One of them, so you guys have like Legos growing up? Legos? So one of them was this Lego game I made. And I just always like, I was like, oh dude, we got all these cool Legos, and all the neighborhood kids, we all had Legos. I'm like, why don't we like do something with these Legos? We have like millions and millions of pieces of Legos, or like, hundreds of thousands or whatever, tens of thousands of pieces of Legos, and you do these things, but there's no like real game. They never really gamified it, right? And so I came up with this way to like have like castle on castle warfare. So like we would spend like a couple days and we'd build a castle each, and then we'd have like turn-based elements, and we'd have our men, and then they'd like battle each other, and it ended up becoming this really, like, it sounds kind of silly at first, but it was become this really big ordeal.
That sounds amazing.
I mean, after like we'd play this game for literally for years, and it became like we had this like huge compendium of like all the different character stats and like all this different track record of all these things.
How old were you?
I was pretty young when it started, maybe like 9 or something.
Wow.
That's all the stories of success. You always hear things like that when you're like before you're 10 years old.
This is your life, man.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That is really amazing.
Yeah.
Really make sure you speak into the mic. You want to be like an inch and a half. It's like a good distance.
No big deal.
Yeah, that sounds much better. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So you're making all these games when you're younger.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you were younger, did you see the big picture, or were you just so in the moment like, oh, this is so much fun?
Not really. I mean, like, what's weird is like I always knew in some level, and this is going to sound weird, but I always knew in some level I wanted to make something like virtual reality, even though back then virtual reality wasn't even an idea in anyone's head, you know, outside of maybe a few people that are working in the scientific community. I always knew that I wanted to like create these images in my head and put them in front of people's faces, right? So it felt real.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't know when that would be or how I would do it. And, you know, and I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't a straight path. I don't think anyone ever goes through life and it just, you
Clear
always
cut.
know what you want. It's clear cut. I don't think anyone's that way. I do know that when I was young, I felt that way. And a part of me's always been inclined towards doing something like that. So I had an idea of like the kind of person I wanted to be and the kind of things I'd want to make, but I wasn't 100% certain. I mean, there was a time in my life when I thought maybe I'd be a doctor. I thought maybe I'd be even a lawyer too. I know it sounds crazy. There was even a time in my life I thought maybe I'd pursue professional mixed martial arts, and that was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that I've thought in my life, but it's kind of always at the very back of my mind pulled me back in this direction of really just being creative, I think, more than anything. So.
Yeah, that's a big part of your job, the creativity, you know, and in our video, you could see like you're talking about the drones, and, you know, you always have to add a new feature to these games. But anyway, you did spend some time at EA, and before that you went to UCF.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your major in UCF, and how was that time?
Yeah, so I can speak on UCF a good bit. So when I attended UCF, I started going there in like 2012 or 2013. I actually went to UCF because of the wrestling program. It's got the best wrestling program in the state of Florida. And I, at the time, was thinking about mixed martial arts. And coincidentally, too, I was considering going to Full Sail because of their game design program, but I learned that UCF had just started one recently. Or didn't really start one, but it had become more official recently. And I was interested in that. And when I joined the program, I realized, you know, I was wrestling too at the time, but I realized pretty quickly, you know, I wasn't going to be a professional mixed martial arts athlete. It just wasn't going to happen. And honestly, like, while it was fun for me, I don't think I was ever serious enough about it. And I think I always knew that I wanted to do something more creative.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually, about a year and a half, 2 years into wrestling for UCF, I quit the program of wrestling, and I started taking game design a lot more seriously. And thankfully, at that same exact time, that's when I got into my upper class electives at the University of Central Florida. And they brought in this really amazing professor, a couple really amazing professors, Peter Smith and Gideon Shabib. Both of them had worked in the games industry previously.
Mm-hmm.
And before then, there hadn't been anyone at UCF that actually worked in the games industry. So you had like web design teachers teaching game design, and they really didn't know what they were talking about.
Or care.
Or some of them might have cared, but they didn't know. But these guys really knew their stuff, and they cared. And I was really fortunate to have them mentor me And around that same time, I had all this free time, and I wasn't wrestling anymore. I was just going to class. I was fortunate enough to where I didn't have to work a lot. I've worked, summer jobs, that kind of thing. So I said, why don't I take the same sort of mentality I had when I was wrestling and playing sports and any of my work environment and apply that towards my education. And I did that. I was like fairly young, and I kind of goofed off for a few years before then with, my career and that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, a lot of people did. And I was definitely one. We could talk on that for a bit. And this is about 22. And I'm like, all right, let's do this seriously. And that's when I founded Game Dev Nights and Gaming Nights. Those are two of the largest student-run organizations at a university. You started
Gaming Nights?
Both of them, yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So Gaming Nights, I was the co-founder. I'd give a lot of credit to Alex Chiricosta, who was the primary founder. He was actually a wrestling team captain, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So before then, it was actually Land Nights, which I didn't found. Land Nights is really old. It actually shortly got transitioned into console nights.
Local area network nights, like LAN. Okay,
yeah. It's old. It's really old. It's before Gaming Nights. A lot of people don't know about it, and it kind of there's a whole long history here, but it kind of was not doing as well, and we wanted to also introduce console gaming into it, and LAN Nights was just about computer gaming, and there was a lot of I don't know. It was a big drama thing. We can get into it later if we want, but basically, we started console nights, and then I helped co-found Gaming Nights. A lot of the big events we do, I helped Smash the Record. I was one of the guys start that up. But Alex Chiricosta is really the man there, and he taught me so much about being a leader and running an organization. And after that experience, I went on to found Game Dev Nights, which is still a very large organization too. They do. We were sponsored by Microsoft, by Oculus, a lot of really cool shit. And I actually made an indie game during that time, soon after my graduation too, called Black Sea Odyssey, that made a lot of money, or not a lot, but a decent amount of money, right, for a college student, right, enough to pay back my debt and that kind of thing. And
any amount of money for a college student,
it's great.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. So that was really awesome, and that's the short.
No, I'm interested now in this game that paid your debt off. How did this happen? So this is technically your first commercial game.
This was my first commercial game.
Okay.
Now, I had made, obviously 9 years old making games. Right? I'd made a ton of games for fun, and I think everyone that goes into the games industry has a ton of projects that just never see the light of day. I've got probably 1,000 of them.
Trial and error, yeah.
Right? But yeah, so that was my first hey, let's do this, and it was way different. I actually spent a year in my mom's basement with two other guys working on that game.
Classic.
Yeah, it was real. I mean, my cat's litter box was in that room, and I can tell you, I can still smell my cat's litter box.
Jesus.
Years later. Yeah, but we got through it, and we made the thing, and it was awesome. And those guys are two of my best friends to this day. They're actually making another game right now called Dwarf, and I think it's going to be a huge hit. So that was good and good experience.
What was the game about?
Black Sea Odyssey. So it's a top-down shooter roguelike, kind of like Binding of Isaac. If I had to, we were the roguelike genre was really popular in this time, and we had this idea to have majestic whale-like space creatures. It was very outlandish, and you ride around. This is ridiculous. You ride around on a space surfboard, and you throw javelins at these monsters, and you keep throwing at them until their body parts start to become disfigured. It's kind of gory, and you throw your harpoon and you rip them apart. And they're these huge.
That's a cool concept.
These huge ones. It was
and this is in space.
It's all in space. It's kind of abstract space. But yeah.
Was there a story structure, or was it a high score thing?
It's yes to both.
Okay, fair enough.
It's the story is you are a competitor in an intergalactic space battle called the Black Sea Odyssey to hunt the biggest and baddest monsters in the universe, and you compete against other space hunters.
That's really cool. And how did you sell it? Who did you go to publish it, and how did this all work?
That's another. So this was a long thing, right? This isn't a few months. This was a year and a half, a couple of years development. We actually made one really big mistake in regards to that, but so we this is right around when I was graduating UCF, and I was with the guys' names are Percy Legendre and Peter Milko. So good friends with them, like I was saying. And we had started prototyping this game. I'd worked with them a couple times. They're really smart guys. I knew we could really do something together and be successful. So we started prototyping something while in school. And I only had a couple classes this semester, so I was doing this and running Game Dev Nights and putting a lot of time into this. And I was about to graduate, and at the time I was thinking I was going to work for Blizzard or Riot Games or something. And I was actually interviewing with a couple of those companies during that time. And PJ's don't go to Riot, because at the time I really was obsessed with League of Legends. I was don't go to Riot, stay here, because he needed me to be the engineer guy. And I was like, dude, I don't know, it's really risky. And he's like, I'll tell you what if I get us a funding deal on this project, a publishing deal? And I was like, all right, you get the publishing deal, I'll stay. and like within like 2 weeks he got the publishing deal.
From who?
A company called Mastertronic. They're a UK-based publishing company. It wasn't a ton of money, but it was enough to like feed ourselves and make the
No,
thing.
of course. And so did this release in the UK as well?
So this is another kind of long story bit. So we were working with Mastertronic for about 8 months, and they're like starting to become late with their payment deliveries. And like we're okay, like it's not a big deal. It's like, okay, just get us some money. And like 2 months, 3 months go by, they owe us money, and we're like, what's going on, guys? And don't want to talk anything bad about them. These guys are really awesome.
fair
We
enough.
worked with them for a while. They're good people, but they went into administration. So basically, they went out of business, and they had no money.
Oh, okay.
And we're like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? Like, we need to like we're almost done with this game. We got maybe 6 more months left, but like we can't like not pay ourselves for 6 months. And this is where we made a really big mistake. The guy that runs the company, I can't remember his name, or ran the company. I don't want to say his name because I can't remember it. I think it's Adam. He was going to introduce us to Devolver Digital. I don't know if you guys know Devolver. They're like the poster child for indie. Like any of their games that go, any game that's ever been with Devolver has been, and at least back then, it might have changed now, but back then, any game that had been with Devolver was massively successful, like multi-million dollar, $100 million games, that kind of thing. So they're like the indie one. God,
They're the
we
place to
had the
go.
opportunity to work with them at that time, and we were very prideful, and we're like, no, like we're just gonna self-publish, because like we were like,
Wow.
because we already built up a big following. We had like
man.
we had like 10,000 email subscribers. We were like, oh, dude, like we don't want to give away half of our equity, right?
Yeah.
To this company. We want, and we didn't do that. And while our game did eventually, we did Kickstarter, raise like 15 grand.
Oh, okay.
We did eventually release it on our own, self-funded, and it did well. But I think if we went with Devolver, we probably would have done 10. The game would have probably sold 10 or 100 times better than it did. It's a big
But that
learning lesson.
that rough experience probably, you probably learned a lot. And
A
now
lot.
you can put that into, CyberDream, right?
Absolutely, yeah. With my company now, I've learned a lot since then. A lot. Electronic Arts too taught me a lot.
Damn.
So
What did you learn at Electronic
Yeah.
Arts?
So Electronic Arts is a whole other animal. And I have to be careful about what I say, because I'm sure I signed all kinds of stuff when I worked for them. A lot of the things you hear online are true. I can't really say anything more on that beyond
in
that.
terms of the quality of life, in terms of working there.
I just got to be careful what I say, right?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed my experience there. I learned a lot from the people there. There's a lot of really smart people I got to work with. I think the biggest thing I got to learn while I was there was how to have a really productive studio. I was on the ground floor, right? I mean, it's like a 20,000 person company. I was like one of 800 people in a building. I was one of 300 people working on a new game mode called Madden Long Shot, and I think that I was really good at my job during that time. We were killing it with all the stuff we were doing. But above my desk, I was like number 4718, right? And you'd like actually type in people's numbers, so like reach out to them. So it was very impersonal, and I didn't like that sort of culture. But they are very, very good at making games. I mean, there's a reason they release a game every year. They're very good at least in terms of production. In terms of creativity, I'll let you decide that. But in terms of production and like output, I learned so much from that experience. And I carried a lot of that over to what I do now. I don't have the same sort of work culture they do. We're a lot more loose than they were, but there's a lot of good things I learned about that from them there. I can't really talk too much about it, right? So,
I mean, I'm sure, and clearly you learned a lot, but I'm sure there are like shortcomings that, they just have to deal with when they have shareholders, I think,
Definitely.
and bottom line
Right.
and stuff like that. And they've hired so many people, they got to pay them,
Right.
know, and what do you do? But, so what was day one like when you founded CyberDream, were you sitting, at home and you're like, I'm going to do this?
So when
It's
I was
time.
at EA, I knew I didn't want to stay at that company, and not that company. I knew I didn't want to stay at a big company. I knew and I've always been an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur.
Oh.
I knew that
Interesting.
even going into EA, that it was a learning experience for me. I wanted to know what's it like to work at one of the biggest companies in the world, so that I can take, the good and the bad from that and apply it to my own company one day. I was always reading books when I was working there about entrepreneurial things. I was still great at my job. When I was out there, I was always working. I was never not working while I was there. But at home and outside of work, I was always thinking about other things. So as soon as an opportunity came for me to leave and things were good, I took advantage of it, and I was like, all right, let's do this. let's do this. I've learned a lot. I think VR is really hot right now. So day one was like in my mind for months, if that makes sense.
So you quit, or how did that work out?
No, they laid off like my entire department. Not my entire department, but they laid off like a ton of my team after we released Madden. So I guess it's just like a cyclical thing, and that was a part of like my motivation. I was like,
for sure.
They actually had this huge TV monitor in the room where I was working. I don't know if I can say this or not. Basically, I performed very, very, very well for a very long period of time, and the performance wasn't really important in terms of who they let off. They're just numbers, right? So.
Oh, okay.
And so then, so you got laid off, and then you have this idea. You had been thinking about entrepreneurial ventures for a while, and so you get laid off, and then you have a pool of money. I'm assuming that you could, or did you have ideas about the games you wanted to design, or anything like that, or did you just know VR was the direction you were headed?
So mostly, I just knew VR's direction I wanted to head. I've got a lot of ideas for games I want to build eventually, but Virtual Battlegrounds wasn't the first thing that came to my mind, if I'm going to be honest. Some of the ideas that came to my mind were things I knew I just couldn't build right now. They require big teams. Making games is a lot of work. I wish it was easier, because then I could make so much cooler stuff so much faster. But so I actually went on Reddit. And I actually just finished reading a book called Content Marketing Strategies. It's really interesting.
You were telling us about that when we were over.
Yeah. Just finished reading that book, and it was talking about how, and this after Black Sea Odyssey, I learned this too. It was like, don't build the thing and assume people want to buy it, right? Let's find out if people want to buy it. Let's market it to them, and then let's build the thing. So at the time, PUBG was like kind of starting to get some traction. Fortnite wasn't even probably maybe Epic Games was like just thinking maybe they'll make Fortnite, right? This was like kind of like pre that era, and I was like doing a lot of research, and I started talking to the Reddit community. Wow. I was like, what kind of game do you guys want to see? And I realized, I'm like, dude, battle royales are going to be huge. Like, this is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's do Virtual Battlegrounds. So I put out a trailer for something that was 100% not working at all, but it like short off the idea, and it went kind of viral, and like a ton of people were like freaking out about it, which looking back, it was good at the time, but I made a critical mistake. So that enabled me to get a new publishing deal as well. So for Virtual Battlegrounds, it was actually one of the guys I ended up working with for Black Sea Odyssey to do my console port. Okay. So it was really cool. But the mistake I made with that, showing the game off too early, was a lot of the competition, I think, realized that the VR battle royals were going to be hot too. And I was one guy at the time.
You
not
tipped
a lot
your
of
hand.
money. And they beat me to market. So I still haven't got to market yet. Some of these guys are already on market. I think ours is the best because I've eventually got a lot more money, got a bigger team, and we're going to get to market and be really strong when we do. But we're almost a year late compared to some of our competitors getting to market. So at this point.
I mean, the quality is there, though. I mean, from what we experienced, and because I remember how it was when I first...
like a year ago?
I first experienced it more than a year ago.
More than a year.
I think that was a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago.
It's a long time ago, about a year and a half, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and I'm so shocked at how far it has come. Like, my expectations were like here, and then like when I experienced it a few weeks ago, I was like, whoa, like this is insane.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Thanks.
How are you guys feeling about it so far in terms of, I know you can't tell us like release date or anything, but how are you feeling about its progress?
So definitely good. I can't say release date, but a lot better. I mean, I actually did make a release date like 3 months ago. I was going to do March 15th, and I made that a public announcement. And we could have released on that date. We could have even released it a year and a half ago when you played it, but it's like, when I put this out, because this company is really important to me, and I want to make sure that when we do this, we do it right, because we only got one shot at launch. And I announced, I think, too early, and I'm just not announcing until like I play the game. I want to play the game, have a session, and be like, that was amazing. There's like almost no bugs. Once I have that experience, I'm going to announce the release date. But I want to wait until I have that experience, rather than being like, oh, we'll get there by this day. And I don't know right now. I will say we are doing Guardian Con. Have you guys heard of Guardian Con?
No.
So Guardian Con, it's super cool. You guys should totally check this out. So next
Is it in Florida?
In Florida next weekend. Friday, Saturday. This is July 5th and 6th. I could probably get you guys some tickets if you decide to go. July 5th and 6th. It's definitely one of the largest fundraising events for St. Jude's Hospital Cancer Research. They raised $1 million last week online. It's like a streaming event. Yeah, it's crazy. And we're like one of the premier like indie devs at this space. We got a big 20 by 30 booth. We're gonna have 4 stations for people to come out and play the game.
This is at St. Jude's?
This is for the money being raised is for St. Jude's.
For St. Jude's, got it.
There might be some other charities I know that's one of the prime ones. There might be some other charities too they're raising money for. And it is at the Rosen Center near iDrive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
It's gonna be sweet.
Yeah, we'd love to
That
go.
would be amazing to go. Yeah.
It's the biggest gaming event to ever come to Florida. It's been in Florida for a few years, but this year's gonna be the biggest of any.
So this is a primarily indie?
No. Actually, we're one of the premier indies, but there's Destiny is there. Destiny's I think the biggest person. I think Gearbox, so the latest Borderlands is going to be there.
The new Borderlands looks good.
Yeah. And then 505 Games, they're not indie. They have a ton of big name games. And there's a couple other big studios.
Wow.
Well, there's the biggest indie. So.
You're taking your steps in, man. The door is opening.
Yeah.
Trying.
No, that's fucking exciting.
Trying, dude. It's cool.
So are you going to capture data from this? How do you do your beta testing? That's something I've been wondering about a lot.
It's a good question. We don't do enough. No, I'm just kidding. So many of our fans, some of them might be listening, they're like itching to get into our beta. We've been doing iterative betas. I actually did a beta about a year and a half ago, and it was just way too early. And gamers, they're not game developers. They don't understand hey, this can get a whole lot better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we made the mistake of having way too early of a beta. It just wasn't ready. And I was still really appreciative of their feedback, and we got a ton of good input. So yeah, we just have fans come and play the game. If you're interested, playvbg.com. We send out beta keys. We're going to do one huge beta. We have 20,000 people signed up.
You already have 20,000 signed
Yeah.
up? Wow. Are you going to have the server space?
Yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
I'll participate
know.
if I can.
For sure.
If I have
It's
VR
free.
by then.
It's free for the beta is free, but to buy the game's not free.
Obviously not. Yeah.
If you had to recommend a headset, which one would you?
So I talked to both those people, so I can't just
Oh, right.
With that being said, I can tell you some of the pros and cons of each. So I think Vive is if you're going to spend more money, it's the premier headset. I think the Index is really nice if you're going to spend some more money. And I think the Oculus is the more friendly for low budget. I think if you're going to spend $400, go with an Oculus. There's 2 right now. There's the Rift S and the Quest. The Rift S is great if you have a VR ready desktop. The Quest is really nice if you're comfortable with maybe cutting your library into a quarter of what it could be and playing not as big of games, but it's a standalone and it's $400. So it's cool. So you could just go down the street and put it on your head if you want and play VR games.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe we could get into the more long-term implications of VR. Because I remember when we were talking before, we were talking about, very futurist type stuff, like having an arena where you can set bets on
Have you seen
maybe
Better
in
Play
your Battle
One?
Royale.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the image in my head right now.
Yeah. So what do you think? Where do you think VR goes in the future?
Yeah.
Dude. So I don't think most people realize how big the impact's going to be.
We were just having this argument with our roommate.
Yeah, even 40 years ago, if you told someone about my dad, by the way, he started a PC company 45 years ago, and back then my dad would go to businesses and be like, "Hey, do you guys need software?" And they'd be like, "Oh, that's stupid. We don't need software.
We need hardware."
Hardware, or no, both. Yeah, because he was a software company and they did hardware, and "Oh, we don't need a computer." Yeah, and now literally every person on the planet is glued to their phone half the day.
Yeah.
Imagine what it's going to be like when we're able to put on a pair of goggles and just go somewhere else. So I mean, I'm actually kind of worried for society, to be honest. What's it going to be like for my grandchildren? Are they just going to isolate themselves inside their room because they have their fantasy to them delivered to them all the time? With that being said, I mean, my goals are very. I'm a humanitarian. I do want to legitimately make the world a better place, and I think my way of doing that is through entertainment. So if I can provide a really cool experience, and hopefully it's good enough that people are happy, I don't know, man. I don't really know. That's a whole philosophical sort of question.
Something that
where's going to be, I don't know.
I love to think about when I think about VR futurism is the implications of transportation. Will transportation be so necessary? Because if you can go to a VR workplace, you could go to a VR doctor's office maybe, There'll be very few scenarios where financially it's worth traveling somewhere, once it's really good,
Yeah, that's a thing is, I don't know where it's going to go, but it can essentially, at its core, replace almost everything that we do. Almost everything that we do. And I don't know what the end result's going to be like. Maybe it'll be like Ready Player One. I don't think the world's going to be that dystopian.
No.
But maybe it'll be like Ready Player One.
Like the widespread nature of it, where it's like a household thing.
Right. It's just everyone's got one.
Very
right?
likely.
And then maybe you enter into some multiverse that just has everything you need, and you go to work, you go to class, you do this,
order your groceries,
groceries, you play games, you
groceries.
No, I'm just saying you could do anything, because like instead of going to Walmart, you could, because now they're already setting up these things where you order everything online. You order your groceries online and
delivered,
or you go there or you can have it delivered. Yeah, so you could do all of these things in this one big VR space.
Yeah, whoa. And maybe that's a good thing for like the environment,
It's hard to say, because the wool could get pulled over our
right?
eyes in one way, in that everything's going to start becoming black boxed, where like the consumer is going to be forced to interact with this middleman, like the VR interface, where then you could do whatever you want behind the screen, like Wizard of Oz.
But then there's that like 1984 Matrix kind of, It
just depends, like what with people like you, it's heartening to know that. Obviously, it's not a bunch of like villains twisting mustaches building VR. Like, there are a bunch of people. They care about your grandchildren and your great grandchildren. So you're not trying to build something that strangles their opportunities in a crib.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It depends a lot. I mean, I'm fortunate to where right now my company is a single owner LLC. I may one day raise a ton of capital, and I may have a board, and I can't promise that those people will be as altruistic as I am.
Of course.
Now, with that being said, I do have some goals for my company, and I think. And I don't really know anything about this, but I have some ideas on how we could build a lot of these things that we want to build. I think that have massive implications without having to answer it anyway. Actually, all right, I'll kind of get it because it's really cool. So I think cryptocurrency is amazing. I think that's going to be the currency of the future at some point. I don't know when we're going to get there, because there's a lot of government regulation and banks aren't going to like all that kind of stuff. And maybe they'll be involved with it. I don't know. But I think it would be really cool to build a platform like Ready Player One. And this is just an idea I have. And it'd be awesome to do something like this one day. But build a platform like Ready Player One, but don't actually have anyone own it. And what I mean by that is have it built on a distributed network like a cryptocurrency, so that everyone who plays it owns it. So there'd still be financial incentive for the guys that build it, but we wouldn't necessarily have ownership over it. And there's a whole lot of like who actually maintains the software, blah, blah, blah. There's got to be like a way to build that out financially. But I think something like that could be the best thing for society if something like that is eventually built. Something I've thought about a little bit. Don't know if that'll work or not. I got to do more research.
An advantage of that decentralized system is like there's no server crashes because it's hosted all over the world. There's not like a single server farm, but that's really nice. But there's like 51% attack. There's a whole different set of things to worry about than the set of things that most game developers worry about right now.
I was going to think like the mod community would be amazing, because then you would have open access to the source code. That would be unbelievable. Yeah. You can go into all these different individual circumstances that all the mod community would build. That'd be really cool.
But then you have to get into, when it is updated, who decides how it gets updated, because some people in the mod community aren't that great. A lot of people are great in the mod community.
Yeah, so you can't, like he was just saying about the board, your board members, you can't expect them to be altruistic. You can't expect the mod community to be altruistic.
I think like something like that is eventually going to get made. Like no matter what's going to be me or some other company, or there's already a ton of people trying to do things like this, by the way, throwing a ton of money at it. I think technology's not there yet, personally, which is why I'm interested in doing other projects right now. Eventually, though, I do want to do something like that. But I think what would be best, like let's pretend Ready Player One becomes a thing, right, or something like that. And we're all sucked into this environment. And let's pretend a company like Facebook owns it. Well, maybe, the guy, whoever runs it at that time, maybe, we'll call him like Zuckerberg or someone like that, right? Maybe he's a good guy, but what happens when he dies or his board wants to do something? Or they could really do a lot of terrible things. And I think it would be really cool if nobody owned it and it was on a cryptocurrency or something, and it was decentralized and everybody had a piece of it, and then maybe there was a democracy. Like maybe there's like regions where people can do all their modding and that kind of thing, but maybe like the core region has some sort of like government structure built into it, and there's voting. And I would love to set something like that up personally. Like if I'm gonna do it, I think that could be like one of the biggest gifts I think someone could do for humanity if that eventually comes about, is like making sure that no matter what happens, the shit stays free, right? That would be cool. But I don't know if that'll ever be or how that'll happen, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I think like you said, something like that is inevitable, but maybe Facebook's already working on it. You know,
They
you
are.
wouldn't even
They
know.
are. I know. I mean, I can't say they're working on that, but they're definitely working on VR social stuff.
Yeah.
How's a guy gonna meet like me?
Why else would
compete
they
against
acquire Oculus?
Yeah. Yeah, they're throwing tons of money. I will say the companies that are throwing money at it right now are losing money like crazy because there's not a market for that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the timing is just not right, but they're doing a ton of R&D.
Yeah,
whereas,
that's the most important part, to be honest, because that all those lessons are going to be learned, and the market will open up once they start to get Oculuses and Vives affordable for most people.
I think that's a way of the future for startups and entrepreneurship in general, because Facebook has a product right now, and they have more positive cash flow than they know what to do with. So, they're making investments into the future of what they provide now. And even though it's like a negative cash flow acquirement, like eventually they will get a large return on that. It's inevitable.
If they stick to it, I don't know if they will, and I don't know how long it's going to take. They could eventually say, you know what, we lost like $10 billion and we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's get out. I don't know. I think as a company, that is our long-term goal, to do something like that, just to be frank. Like, we want to do something like Ready Player One long-term. It is a very, very lofty goal. But for the time being, our goal is, profit and R&D. So like, we build cool tech for a lot of companies all over the world, really. Like arcades, military stuff, even medical stuff, all in VR. And we have this like long-term goal in mind, and we're staying profitable, and we're building cool things. We're building cool technologies. I think when the time's right and we have the right team and everything, the stars are aligned, we might shoot for something like that. I mean, maybe not. It might not be the right direction for us, but at some point it would be cool to do something like that. I don't think that'd be the first thing we do. I don't think you just build the Oasis. Like, you build like one part of the Oasis, right? And then people track to that, and then you build on other parts. But we'll see.
I actually got to try some of the VR medical stuff about 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm sure it's much better now. But that was really cool because I'm like a medicine geek, and there's like surgery, right? And you're doing the surgery in VR, and the robot is doing it in reality, right? Yeah. And so if you have like shaky hands, or if someone bumps your elbow, it doesn't pick that up on the robot. And so, now you're not messing up the surgery, so the success rate is way higher.
It'd be interesting because you could solve parts of the doctor shortage problem in some of the worst parts of the world if you could like successfully calibrate it for long distances, because a lot of these places who need doctors
across the internet
don't have them, and you could have these people do it. But I guess then you would have, anyway, that has a lot of implications, but
so
that's a good idea.
The doctors go to a simulation center, a virtual reality center, and then on the other side of the planet, someone's getting... that'd
be really bizarre.
That's wild. But that might be coming.
It seems like it is. And you opened up another door that I wanted to ask you about, and you reminded me. Military training with VR, since you are doing these VR shooting games. VR shootings, that's what I meant. How do you...
I'm laughing at his face locking up. Like, what can I talk about? What can I not talk about?
It's very, very sensitive. I have to be careful what I say.
Fair enough. It's instead of doctoring, it's militating, however you want to say it. So I know you've probably been approached. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. But do you think there could be side effects that you aren't entirely approving of regarding this?
So. Yes to that, and we'll talk about that for a second. But all I can really say in terms of, I can't really talk about what I'm doing, right. But I can say what's like publicly available knowledge that a lot of people probably don't know about. The military is taking on a massive VR initiative right now. It's the synthetic training environment, STE. You can Google it. It's tons of information online. And they are building some really, 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 and honestly, a lot of really cool stuff, kind of scary stuff too. And I do think that, there could be some I think there could be some, in terms of making our country safer, there's a million things that are really awesome that are happening. And in terms of training our people, it's one of the biggest things going around. Just the training is really amazing. I mean, you can simulate warfare almost to the realist degree, with the exception of like, you know, death and pain. You could probably simulate that too, minus the death part, if you wanted to very, very extreme degrees because of, you know, VR. And so you're able to cost effectively do a lot of these things that you wouldn't normally be able to do. And just the medical stuff you talked about was really cool too. But yeah, I mean, I had someone approach me, and this is something I would never do in a million years. If even the military offered it to me, I would not. This is something that just crosses the line for me. There's an episode in Altered Carbon, I think on Netflix is kind of about this, but it's like VR, what's it called, torture, and it's just, I had someone actually approach me about that, not in the military space, but in another space, and it's just like that's something that'll probably happen. And the guy started going into his ideas about it. And I'm like, that's terrifying, you know.
He had ideas about it.
Oh yeah, he had a ton of ideas about it. And I was like, wow, that sounds extremely effective, but that's just. And that's probably going to get made one day. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's probably going to happen. And I hope it doesn't, and it's something I will never do. But, yeah, there's a lot of negative implications, too, that could come as a result. And sort of the subsets of society.
You actually answered my second question. Go ahead.
That's not something I've ever
contemplated.
Yeah,
me neither.
I'm getting a lot of fresh
ideas now. All the dark side of the world that could be simulated.
Watch Altered Carbon. There's, like, an episode... it's like the fifth or sixth. It's a really good TV show in general, sci-fi. And there's an episode about Altered Carbon. It's on Netflix. It's a great TV show, sci-fi. There's an episode about VR torture, and it's kind of terrifying.
Wow.
People being stuck in VR for months. And Black Mirror's got some good stuff there, too.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I was going to ask you, actually, you answered it, but now, I guess in different circumstances. This is from the business perspective instead of the military perspective. You ever seen It's a Wonderful Life?
Honestly, no.
Okay, no worries. There's a big businessman who basically owns the town, and he keeps trying to push out this family-owned bank the whole movie. And at some point, the main character gets asked, while they're bankrupt, to just buy into this guy. He'll fund them, but he'll start ruining the whole community. If the circumstance comes where Facebook beats you to the punch, or or whoever does, this is just a hypothetical question for you.
Okay.
Do you think you'd stick to your principles regarding like going to work for them if they forced you in those circumstances?
Would I work for Oculus or Facebook, like
if they offered you like an
ton of money
deal, you know?
You know, like, it really depends, man. It would depend. Like, let's say my company was making a ton of money, and we were like the frontier in the VR social space. No. No, probably not. Well, almost. If I'm building Oasis, I'm going to say definitely not, because at that point, I don't need $10 billion. I don't care.
You don't need the boardroom trying to tell you what to do.
I don't need the boardroom telling me. If I've got, you know, enough to where I'm very comfortable, I can pay for my family, I can pay for, you know, my kids, make sure they're all taken care of, make sure the people I care about are taken care of, and help my community, then that's all the money I need. I don't need $10 billion. So if Facebook comes to me and offers me $10 billion, I'm going to be like, okay, I don't need $10 billion. Like, what do I need that for? Now, on the other hand, if they wanted to make a partnership with me and had my vision in mind and wanted and cared about the world as a whole the way I do, and were willing to work with me in that sort of way, and still wanted to make a ton of money because they have, you know, whatever, it's like cryptocurrency shares or something, yeah, I'm all over. I think I probably will do that at some point. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this alone. I'm just, I'm just a guy. I'm going to need someone, you know, some big players in the world. So yeah, and so it just depends on the situation.
No, that's a good answer.
You said Oasis?
The Oasis.
Yeah, have you ever seen Ready Player One? That's the name of the virtual reality space.
I get the idea of it, but yeah, I need to watch it.
It's okay.
We were just describing like a world where everyone goes to and you can hang out with friends, you can do mods. It's just a big VR space that everyone goes to, and you can play games, you can talk, you can do a bunch of. It's just called the Oasis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought maybe that was like your idea of like what you were gonna call it.
No, I'd have to call it. It's a great name. It is a good name. It exists though, and I'm not gonna. I'd have to call it something else. And I probably wouldn't, just like I said, just make the Oasis, right? Because that's like, we're talking like decades of work to build like that. But I'd build a part of it, right? Like maybe it'd be like an esports viewing thing first. It's kind of what we're talking about. And there's some live event stuff. I think that'd be really cool too.
That is a great idea. Do you have any ideas VR wise that are independent of video games that you'd be willing to talk about?
Yeah.
I understand.
So there are some really cool things I'm doing with some of the biggest people in entertainment that I can't talk about, but there are. Esports is really big. I think that's one thing I can't talk about. It's not directly video games. It's more about community, right? And so you go to an event, and it might even be for traditional sports. There's actually companies doing this right now where they put like 360 cameras on like the front row seats at the 50-yard line at like basketball games, and
Oh,
you can
yeah,
watch
yeah.
it
Be
in
there.
VR. It's pretty sick. But we're interested in doing something like that for esports specifically, but not with a 360 camera, but like 3D rendering like the actual game itself inside of VR, and you're like in there with other people watching it, maybe like in a stadium or something. So it's like one of our ideas. And
But this gave me a really creepy image of all sporting events being reduced to an empty stadium. They're playing, but it's just a bunch of cameras, and then your tickets is just to buy bandwidth space.
Yeah.
Dude, I think VR esports is going to be pretty sick.
Oh, for sure.
You're going to get
yeah.
like basketball player athletics, right? Or like whatever football player. And then they're going to be like playing some insane game. Dude,
And you could think about the VR though with the video game part is that you can be in the lobby and you could be like in the game world, but like not shooting. You don't have to be watching on a screen. You could be like in
You
it.
could be in it, exactly.
That'd be amazing.
That's kind of what one of the things we're R&Ding right now, something like that.
Wow, that's really exciting.
Imagine every player on the team, let's say for like basketball, individually in their own warehouse, like playing, but they're physically interacting, and they have like jumpsuits with like touch on them.
Take away all the injuries.
There's no more concussions.
Yeah.
As soon as a concussion is about to happen, there's some sort of correction. That'd be crazy.
The door. This like breaks open a whole new realm of thought that things that are possible. It's so weird to realize that we're living it. It's bizarre.
It's a weird
Did you ever
time.
like try to imagine it when you were young or anything like this? I don't think I could have.
Yeah. So
Ha.
I've always lived in my head, dude. Since I was a little kid, man. I've always like, and I'm just like, like honestly, a lot of like, what's interesting to me is like you read books, and I read a lot when I was a kid, and books like they almost like predict the future, dude. Especially like sci-fi and fantasy. A lot of things they write in there are like, so I always like saw this world that was like, I don't know, like hundreds of years into the future. And while I definitely never predicted where we're at right now, there's not a person on the planet that can say that. But I think some of the things are happening right now. Yeah, I think I thought of them. I think honestly, like I thought of the. This sounds ridiculous. I'm not trying to like be. I thought of the phone like way before the smartphone, way before it was a thing. I thought, oh yeah, we're all gonna have PCs walking around one day. It's like gonna happen. Yeah. And I was like 13. I'm talking to my dad, right? I think I've always had a good vision for that. I don't know. Where things are gonna go now, I will admit, like things are getting to the point now where like, dude, I don't know what's gonna happen next because things are starting to get really weird.
Happening fast.
It's happening so fast. Like a lot of things up until now, I think I've been right about, but like I think I think we're about to hit a tipping point where things are gonna snowball out of control, and I don't know where they're gonna go. And that's gonna be with AI, with VR. With like longevity, like medical, like CRISPR. There's a lot of things that are about to happen that I think are really gonna space travel. I mean, probably gonna discover aliens in our lifetime. There's a lot of things that are like about to just really change our perspective on reality, I think.
Wow. Yeah. It's weird because like our brains are built for like a certain speed, like a certain like path.
Yeah, living in tribal
that whole
circumstances.
Trend has always been sort of like this, and we're living. How lucky are we to be living when it's about to go like that? Yeah.
No, you're 100% right.
That's crazy.
I think we live in one of the most interesting times of mankind. I'd say like my grandparents did too, because they went from, the industrial age to the digital age, and a lot of my grandparents are. My grandma's like 93. She's was a very sharp lady. Actually, one of the like political founders here in Orlando, and
wow.
And she's kind of worried about the world. She doesn't really understand it. She doesn't understand what's going on, but I can only imagine what it's been like for her. So.
Jesus, I know, because who knows what it's gonna look like for us when we're 93.
Yeah, if we get there, I hope we get there.
When we get there.
When we get there.
Longevity,
You guys,
Ray Kurzweil's gonna hook us up.
Well, with CRISPR, get those
spicy genes.
Yeah,
I hope so.
anti-aging genes.
I just grew very conscious of your time. It's been an hour. I want to make sure everything's okay with you.
I can do 20 more minutes.
Sweet.
Okay. Do you want a beer or?
Yeah.
I got you. I got you. You ask him more questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right. So, what is your favorite beer?
I actually love beer. So it's Kentucky Bourbon Stout.
Oh, wow.
It's a very expensive beer. There's a website called Beer Advocate, and it rates all the beers in the world, and it's like number 4 or something. It's like the highest rated stout. It's amazing. I had it for my wedding for the first time.
Damn. Is it expensive?
It's about $20 a bottle. You can't buy it anywhere. You have to like specialty. I bought it off. You're not supposed to do this, but I bought it off a guy from eBay, whatever.
Oh.
He's not supposed to sell alcohol on the internet, but anyway.
It was non-alcoholic, right?
It was an empty bottle.
Okay.
I bought 6 empty bottles of Kentucky Bourbon Stout.
Wow.
And they were the best I've ever had.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. I like myself a Yingling, a simple man.
Yingling was my first favorite beer.
Nice.
and I like a whole lot of things in between.
Nice. I'm really starting to get into it. But anyway, yeah, my friend showed me this app called Tapped, and have you heard of that?
I think I had it downloaded for a while. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. I think that's Yingling.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You got it.
Cool.
What did I miss?
Oh, we were just talking about beer. Yeah. You're into wine though.
Yeah.
I like wine too, but I don't drink. Wine's expensive, man. To get good wine.
I've like anesthetized myself to like bad wine. I don't know, like on a budget, you're just like,
You drink whatever.
you gotta do what you gotta do.
Are you a sommelier? Is that the
No.
word?
It's sommelier.
Sommelier.
That's yep.
I don't drink wine at all. I'm not into.
That's fancy shit.
Yeah, no. I like a nice beer with hops.
You like IPA?
Dark notes.
Dark
Yeah,
notes.
I do. I like
Oh, I
IPA.
despise IPAs.
I like stouts.
Nice. Are you into whiskey at all?
I like whiskey. I actually decided like 2 days ago that my favorite, because like I always thought I liked Scotch, but I was like, no, dude, I like bourbon. I like my favorite is oh my god, it's leaving me now. I just decided like 2 days ago. Buffalo Trace.
Haven't even heard of it.
It's
So now
good.
I have a recommendation.
It's
Yeah.
not super. I mean, it's expensive, but not super expensive. You can buy, I think, like a handle for like $50. So it's not crazy. It's like mid high shelf, and it's really good, especially for the money. They make some higher end brands that are more, but you don't need to get them.
I want to try some of the Japanese.
Yeah, I do
whiskeys.
too. Yeah, me too.
They
Everything
have
in
my
Japan I
interest.
want to try.
I was just in Japan 3 months ago.
For what purpose?
Because it's fun.
That's a good answer.
How was it? What'd you do?
It's amazing. Japan's amazing. I went with a couple friends. So Japan's like, I mean, obviously gamers, right? Anime, all that kind of stuff. You can't. It's like one of the best places ever in the world by far. But yeah, I had some Japanese whiskey there. It was really good, and some other things. A lot of stuff. Tokyo, Kyoto is amazing. Beautiful country. People are so nice. Services there is amazing. So, yeah.
Good sushi.
So I ate. I didn't spend a ton of money here, but the guy that like founded. His like great grandfather founded, I think, sushi on rice. I don't remember the technical term for it, but yeah, I ate there. It was amazing. It was like our one expensive sushi night. That was awesome.
And it was notably better than.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, don't like. So in America they do it differently. They Americanize it a lot. Over there it's a lot more simple. It's just like clean cuts of fresh fish over rice, soy sauce, and then like real wasabi and ginger. Sometimes they'll have some more interesting things, but. Yeah.
What's real wasabi?
So in America, wasabi
Most
is
of it's fake.
Yeah, it's horseradish. There's
Yeah.
actually a place in
really?
Orlando had real wasabi the other day called Kabuki, and it was
Kabuki?
amazing. But it's very hard to get in the U.S.
Yeah.
So it's a plant, and then just grind it up. I think the roots they grind it up. But yeah, you almost can't get in the U.S. or it's very hard to get in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
So it's a bunch of
tastes
fake.
different.
Is it like spicier or?
Spicier. Have you had it?
No, I haven't, but I know what fake wasabi is.
Yeah, it's actually tastes more. I thought it would be more different than it is. It actually tastes really similar to horseradish.
Oh.
It is stronger. You get more of those like nose and your face explosion notes. It does taste better. It's like chalkier, but
Interesting.
it's
I've
delicious.
probably only had fake wasabi.
Yeah.
Most people have.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had it
America.
for the first time like a few months ago. So
Did you see any like futurist kind of stuff? Like I heard Singapore like is like the place to go if you want to see what is life going to be like in 20 years. But Japan's like ahead of their time in some places, right?
So
Is there anything that shocked you?
yeah, nothing that really shocked. Well, there are some things. They're very. They're very sexual in a weird kind of way over there. That kind of did shock me. Like there's a lot of stores you walk into that you think they're comic book shops, and then there's 3 floors dedicated to pornography, and there's a lot of people
damn.
trading. And that's I probably shouldn't get into it, but yeah, that kind of surprised me. I knew there was a thing, but I didn't realize how big of a thing it is over there. Interesting considering they have a declining population.
Yeah, it is interesting.
I think they're just very timid over there, and that's their outlet, is my guess.
Well, I've heard a lot of like bad things about porn in general. Maybe it's the cause of the declining population. You know?
Yeah,
Or at least it's like it's correlated.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's correlated in some way. I think I don't really want to know. I'm not super knowledgeable in Japanese culture, but my perspective is, yeah, they're just more of like a cultural shyness they have. Like they're on the they're very, very against public PDA.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there was a time when like I grabbed my wife and I picked her up, and a bunch of guys were like clapping and freaking out because it was so weird for someone to do that in public.
Clapping?
Yeah, like they thought it was funny, like laughing and clapping.
Oh,
Like, oh wow, like I picked her up in the air, like hugging her, and they're kind of like freaking out because people don't do that in Japan. And I'm like, ooh, like oops, I put her down. And it was like everyone's laughing. It was really funny, but it was like that's how
That
the culture
seems
is.
so ass
So half
backwards.
of them were like, yes, this is where we want to go, and then the other half were like, no, this isn't right.
They probably all loved it, but it was like the first time they'd ever seen someone do something like that, so they all kind of in public, so they all kind of freaked out.
That's so interesting. It almost feels like now, this,
aspect.
considering what you just said about like the hidden underground regarding their pornography, like they're suppressing everything into well, you said it's not, because it's not suppressed.
Well,
it's out in the open, but then you can't like do stuff like that in public.
Right.
It seems
so
backwards.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Is I think it's like it's suppressed, and that's their outlet. Is kind of
Yeah.
where we're going with it, right?
Yeah.
But let's move away from that. Let's talk about technology. So Japan, I didn't see a ton of their tech, but I will say what's amazing of there is their transportation system. Holy crap! They have a huge electric subway system. Everyone rides on subways. They're like always on time. They're always fast. So clean. They have what's called a bullet trail over there. It goes like 200 miles an hour. It's a train. It goes 200. You can literally get across the country in like 4 hours. It's insane. Rode that everywhere. You buy a pass. And
What's it feel like inside? Does it feel like you're going 200 miles an hour?
Yeah, you do. There's a time when we were on the bullet train going this way, and another bullet train's going that way, and we passed each other, and it was like, I don't know, it was like a shockwave. I think I was like sleeping, and it was like, so yeah, you feel it. And you look outside, and you're like, dude, like I'm going so fast.
They don't let
really
anyone
cool.
stand when you're going 200 miles an hour, right?
Obviously it's like a plane, right?
Okay.
You can stand.
You're like,
you're not like.
Oh, really?
You're not like.
You can't tell. It's not like you're in warp.
Does it like
Right.
slowly accelerate? So
The accelerate's very slow. I mean,
Okay.
it's very calm. Like there's not very many accidents over there except for suicides.
Yeah.
With their transit system, it's very safe. They know what they're doing over there, in that regard.
That's cool. I heard they're also like the sleeping quarters. It's like everything is much smaller.
Like packed.
Yeah.
Definitely true. Everything's packed. But part of it too is people that are just a lot smaller.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really?
A lot smaller. Like I don't really. I'm like above average height, maybe 5'11", but I was like kind of like a giant in Japan. Like we'd be
really.
walking you'd be huge. You guys would be huge. I could be walking down the street, and I was with a friend there. He's 6'2", and he's a Dominican, and he's one of the only dark-skinned people there too. So we stood out like sore thumbs when walking around, and I was one of. It's like 98.6% Japanese people over there. Their population.
Yeah, they have a really strict immigration. Yeah.
But yeah, it was very tall. And the living quarters were very small. We actually stayed in capsules one night. That was really cool.
That's really.
You stayed in the like capsule hotel thing.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Damn.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you to like shift gears back to the video game question.
Okay.
You haven't played. You said last time we spoke, you said you hadn't had time to play, which makes all the sense in the world. I was gonna ask you your top 3 favorite games and why.
So this is like.
I want to ask top 3 because I know most people can't say their number 1.
Right. This is like for me. This is like asking me what my favorite children are.
You know you have. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. It's so hard because like I've loved so many games for so many different reasons over the years, but. I'm gonna say so. Witcher 3 is probably my all-time favorite game. I put more hours into other games, but for like the 200 hours I spent in it, it's in my opinion it's an actual masterpiece in the gaming market. And this is kind of a weird one. I think Warcraft 3 is probably my number 2. The reason being the modding community on that game, the custom games, like literally half the games we play nowadays are based off the modding community from that game. And I was playing them before they were really a thing, like MOBAs and like tower defenses, even like things like Ark, like survival dinosaur game. Like
really?
So many different games, like gladiator-based arena games.
For Warcraft.
This is all in
3.
Warcraft?
All in Warcraft
Modding?
3 custom games modding community.
So that's kind of like ahead of its time.
Super ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Most
Wow.
people don't really know about it, But it was all like that's literally where these ideas came from, and then they became full games. So I spent like a lot of time.
I wonder if those modders just got picked up by the industry
Yeah,
because
no,
I know
well,
that's a recruiting method for big companies.
Yeah, like the lead designer of Dota 2 was a modder for Warcraft.
Yeah, I've especially heard that about Valve, the company that made Half-Life and Steam and everything. And Valve, I mean, they have, and I've probably said this before on the podcast, but like, they have such a cool company structure.
You've talked to me about this. I don't think you've talked about this.
It's crazy. Like, there's no apart from like Gabe Newell and like a few other executives, there's no like hierarchy, and anyone can work on any project that they want to. So like the projects that are fun just sort of accumulate with people, and that's what ends up getting developed.
So like this is like they just throw chum in the water and they see where people aggregate.
It sounds
Wow.
really weird, but like it apparently has worked, you know?
Clearly.
And I can't imagine, like, it must be really hard for them to get like people to work on like the Steam client when you can go work on like Dota, you know?
Right.
But have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I know a good bit about it. It's very most game developers or cultures like kind of renowned, right? I don't know if it's working anymore because let's be honest, like when was the last time they put out a game? I think they put out a card game recently and it got terrible reviews.
Yeah.
I think
Interesting.
if you know, for like a multi-billion-dollar company that makes 90% of their revenue from other people's games, at this point they're definitely still game developers, right? And I have a ton of respect for Valve and like their initial games that they put out are amazing. Right, like Portal and Counter Strike and Team Fortress and Half-Life. I love those games, but I mean, it's been a long. They're not like. Are they still making games? I don't want to like talk too bad about them. I'm a little emotional here because I want Half-Life 3.
Me too. Me too.
I think it's really cool, and I hope it's still working for them, and I hope they're still making really cool, awesome projects behind the scenes that I don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
You always can only hope.
It's been a while though. It's been a while.
You're a big Half-Life player?
I liked it a long time ago. It was cool. I actually played a lot of Counter Strike, like 1.6, and then later Source, and don't play it anymore. But
yeah, of course not.
Yeah, that one's a real time sucker. League of Legends, Counter Strike, you know, like any of those competitive, because you just like you start correcting the smallest little like milliseconds, and then once you get down to that point, it's like, whoa, I'm spending a lot of time on this one thing.
Yeah, I think to get good enough at a video game. So I was like in StarCraft, I was like high diamond, which was like kind of like Masters back then because it didn't have Masters, and League of Legends is like high diamond as well. To get even to that level, you have to sink in like thousands. I sunk thousands of hours into those games. So I don't know who my number 3 is. I'm thinking maybe StarCraft, but it's like Warcraft and StarCraft are so similar. But there's a lot of other games I love, like Halo. But anyway, you have to sink thousands of hours into those games to get to that level, and then to get any higher than that, I think honestly there's a bit of natural gift I think you have to have in order to react that quickly. I think I would argue there's probably a correlation between IQ and people being able to perform at that level.
Actually, I just spent a little bit of time doing research on that.
You should talk about flow.
No worries, take your time.
Yeah, I can answer that later. But yeah, to get to that level, you got to sink a ton of time.
There actually is correlation between what you just described
really?
in terms of high performance gamers and what they can score on IQ tests. And actually, as long as you don't, it's weird because there's a debate going on about like dividing them up, trying to divide the time people spend and how fast people are playing games between addicted and non-addicted. Because like, would you say that esports players are addicted versus someone who's playing low skill StarCraft? Like they're not high diamond, they're just like they're spending the exact same amount of hours as you are, but they're just not as good. Versus like the esports players, they're spending the same amount of time.
They're just not good investors.
Because a few of them, because a good part of the population isn't as fast and their IQs aren't as high, but then the really, really good ones, their IQs are absolutely higher and they perform better in STEM and they actually are way more likely to get higher paying jobs in like computer science. There's actually some science behind that.
That's interesting. I've just always assumed that, to be honest.
It makes sense. No, I love when science confirms intuitions.
It's interesting. I kind of like that personally. I don't know. Well, not the IQ portion of it, but I like that video games are becoming a more popular medium for people to watch because like I told you guys before, I played sports growing up and I did wrestle, but like it was never my thing. You know, I was always like the smart guy, to be honest. Like I always like building things, but honestly, I was bullied a lot growing up. That's why I started wrestling, by the way, and got into mixed martial arts was so I could defend myself, and eventually it worked, and I was like became like a tough guy, right? But that wasn't really who I was. You know, it was more just doing it as a facade to like fit in. And,
I know the feeling.
And so I'm happy that as a society we're kind of like we're appreciating people for, for being good at things like that. So I think it's cool, but we'll see.
No, it is changing the incentives because I saw this thing. All the toys we're playing with now are phones and computers. They were all built by the people who were bullied, and now, all the tough guys are trying to play sports, and the best people who play sports are like 0.001% of the population. So most people aren't going to be professional athletes, right? But then they end up getting caught I want to say get caught in the web of the smart guys, because now they have to deal with all these things and get jobs that all the smart guys created.
Yeah, that's the
Revenge of the Nerd.
I forget who said this, but they essentially it's like program or be programmed.
Yep. It's weird how kind of it seems that way sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean, is the cream of the crop esports? They're being programmed.
We all are,
right?
I mean,
They're not the programmers.
it's hard to say.
So in my experience, this is like kind of like out there, but in my experience, the people that actually like run things aren't necessarily they're smart people, but they aren't necessarily smartest people. They are one of two things. They're either it's like 10 generations, right? And they're like generation 10, and that's just how things have been going, right? And that's probably the biggest portion of it. And then the other thing is they're just masterful with people. If you can master people, you can master the world. I mean, you can have the smartest people in the world working for you if you can master people, but you got to be smart yourself. You got to make smart decisions.
It's a different type of intelligence. Yeah, you don't have to be able to like solve the problem of the atom to run an important company.
Right. So social intelligence. Those are people really running things, and hopefully those people are mostly good people. Most of the people I've met, those are good people. But I don't know that.
It sucks because mastering people comes easier to sociopaths and psychopaths.
Yeah. Well, he's a sociologist, so he's like studying that kind of stuff all the time.
I think you probably know more about this, but there's probably a correlation between like I think treating people well and being a good leader. Like I know there's probably a lot of examples of where people took advantage of people and worked, but I'd argue more often than not those people aren't as successful in the long run. Like I with my company, I try my best to treat my people really well. You know, whatever they want to do, we always have fun. You know, I know what it's like to be in their shoes. You know.
Yeah.
And I think as a result, those people really respect me a lot and are committed to what we're doing and committed to our goals. So
the over-aggressive leadership style is unstable most cases. Like actually the most recent nonfiction book I was reading was about the evolution of like good societies. And long story short, he ends up going through these instances where people try to create societies either on purpose or by mistake being like shipwrecks and things like that, where like societies a group of people have to do something to survive, right? So leadership hierarchies take form. They start to allocate resources. They start to figure out how to solve problems. And good leadership that asked for permission to lead were the most stable societies. The ones where people kind of were trying to dominate each other. So like there were 2 or 3 like alpha type personality types that were just vying for dominance, and those societies didn't make it. And because the only way we know that is because there was someone in the group who was writing, and there's who knows however many little things like that happen that we don't know about. But yeah, what you're saying is it's very true. Good leaders are obviously, you have to be assertive, you have to be able to like make things move, but you can't get walked over, but you can't be over dominant to the point where like you won't listen to anyone. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're right.
Cool.
Keep pushing it that direction.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Do you have any good books you recommend on I don't know, social?
Yeah, plenty. Depends. Do you like history and war and stuff?
I like reading about it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. One of my favorite books of all time is called The Better Angels of Our Nature. It's about the history of violence and just the how war happens and how things are looking in the future in terms of war. And then the one I was just talking to you about was called Blueprint. It's called The Evolutionary Rationale for a Good Society. Cool. Things like that. There's a bunch of good ones.
I'd be interested. I think
actually when we're off this podcast, I'll roll you through my bookshelf.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I think there's a lot, we can learn from our history, right? Our mistakes. I hope that we've learned from them, but enough.
It's weird because like collectively, no. Because you need leaders to be able to like put those narratives into the world. Because most people, you can't expect regular people to take that burden on themselves when they're working 60 hours a week, trying to put food on the table.
You can't. That's why I try and read a lot, at least a couple of books a month, because if I'm going to lead a company like that, I need to try and be as responsible as I can for all my people, and having all the information at my disposal is more the better, right? And honestly, like no one individual can learn, I think, as much as needed to be learned. I think you have to surround yourself with people, those people that are smart and know the things you need to know.
I think that is one of the secret weapons of the people you were just describing, in terms of the leaders. I think they surround themselves with people that fill in their weak places, and they allow whoever the figurehead is to help direct that energy.
Yeah, they understand how to build a complete machine.
Yeah, because you can't do it alone. Genghis Khan didn't do it alone. Alexander the Great didn't do it alone.
Yeah.
Even though those were dangerous and horrible things, but they accomplished big things.
No one did it alone. Elon Musk didn't do it alone.
No way.
Yeah. Steve Jobs, he walks out there I'm sure you've heard this before, but he walks out there and all these nameless, faceless scientists are like grinding away to make like these amazing products. I mean, I'm an Apple guy. I've got a lot of Apple products, but and then he walks out there by himself.
Yeah, he's the face, right? But no, the reality is it's a ton of people. Like the things, it's kind of weird for me because I've always been like the nameless face, right, on the project, and to move away from that more into that position, it's weird.
It's a little stressful.
It's not so much that it's stressful. It's like it's humbling.
Yeah.
Because like I feel for my team and I feel like they deserve as much recognition as I do. Maybe there's a way that's
refreshing. I feel like what you just described actually is that there's a moment or a set of moments where you start to feel your role like adhere to you, and the reaction can be the power trip where it's like, finally, yes, I've always wanted this. And then there's the other reaction, which I'm happy to hear that you had, which is I'm going to try to distribute the praise because it's deserving.
It's just how I honestly feel. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like it's nice to be in charge.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. But
right.
There's a difference between the person who's like we were just describing, the power hungry.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
I'm sure you've encountered them.
Oh yeah, and it's crazy though. And this is kind of like goes back to what I was talking about before about making the Oasis in a way where nobody owns it. And there's this good saying from Plato. There's a good saying from Plato. What was the book? I can't remember. Like the Republic, I think. But he talks about like absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And it's something I really believe in. And while I think that I'll say to my morals, I don't know that. Like if I'm put in a position, I might take advantage of it someday, and someone else might too. If it's not me, right? So that's kind of my philosophy there.
That's my absolute power corrupts absolutely. My dad says that.
Really?
He must say that once a month. Because he just says it so often. And it's so true. It's so simple, and it's just like, that's the way it is.
It's people who
we
think
see
they
it
deserve,
all the time.
Yeah, the people who think they deserve power are the ones who are going to be corrupted by it the most.
That's actually, I could kind of feel this when we first met.
Mm-hmm.
Like all this sort of like understanding in our first conversation. I won't forget it. But that's actually why I believed in you. 2 years ago when we first met, I saw that pitch at Orlando Tech Meetup.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this guy, and when I went to try your game too, I was like, you know what? You have the right mentality. You have the right mentality, and I just feel like you're destined for success because of that.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Is that a good sign off for you?
That's a great sign off for me.
Yeah,
it was really good to have you, man.
So great to have you.
It was great. I'm glad you guys had me. So it's really cool what you guys are doing.
We'll send you this video, and you could send it to wherever you want.
Cool.
Yeah. And let us know, if there's any like section that you really like, because I'm definitely gonna take a highlight and post it online. Cool. and whatnot.
So yeah, please let us know if you watch this or if you have the time. If there's anything you wish you didn't say that we can
click out. Okay, I think I'm good, but I'll check it just in case.
Good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Really good to have you.
Thanks,
guys.
Great
to have you.
Yeah.